So Alec Dawson, who's the lead hero designer for Overwatch 2, interviewed Spylo, who is a content creator, former professional coach, and actually my coach for our team Overwatch. They did an interview. Spylo asked a bunch of questions. Alec answered them. It is summarized here on Reddit thanks to user Shadio Chow, and I'm going to read through it to you right now and give my thoughts on what they had to say. All right, Spylo asked Alec, what is the biggest change of Season 11 so far? And Alec's response was, Cassidy's flashbang now has a much more understandable and natural radius compared to Magnetic Grenade being unpredictable. Magnetic Grenade wasn't very beloved. Yeah, you could say that again. And they wanted to do something for that for quite a bit of time. I mean, it's not much to say here, not much to add. Cassidy's old flashbang in Overwatch 1. Annoying, but also predictable. It's a defensive tool, and you have to respect the range. And, you know, getting rid of that cheesy RNG chase nade from Magnetic Grenade. Big change, kind of reverting back to the old version, but like without the CC. So I think it's a perfectly healthy change for the game. Next thing the Spylo asked was, what were the goals of the Season 11 patch? In summary, Alex said that they want to hit the top meta heroes. So they want to shift powers in the heroes that haven't been changed in a while. Kiriko and Sojourn have been around and very prominent for a long time at the top of the meta, but they started to see that Sojourn's popularity is dropping at a rapid rate. Roadhog's still pretty popular, and they don't try to aim for a certain popularity level by playing favorites with heroes. So far, Sojourn and Illari are a good example of shifting power. Railgun now has a better base to work with, and there's a lot more they can do with her now that Symmetra, D.Va, and Reaper got lost in the armor changes. Well, Sojourn dropping in popularity is pretty... Sojourn dropping in popularity was kind of expected with a major shift in the power of Rail, going from 130 to 100, and then that headshot only being 150. The chances of you hitting multiple people, because Rail now can pierce without being an overclock, is much more unlikely than the overall average damage output of Sojourn's Rail and the burst potential. So that's a major nerf. Kiriko's nerf was pretty minor, so Alec didn't mention anything about Kiriko's playtime going down, but I can imagine Kiriko's still pretty good because the changes to her were pretty minor. A 1 second nerf off the TP does matter, but like it's not as significant as Sojourn's nerf. And then the whole like Suzu knockdown thing is only specific in like maybe the Rein matchup and maybe the Doom punch with like Brig, but like when two people fall down on those kind of collisions, that's already a rare occurrence. And the fact that if you have your Suzu available for that, these are just minor things. I will say they did hit the nail on the coffin with the Sojourn and Illari in terms of shifting power and adding power to different parts of the kit. And now that, you know, Alec is saying they want to do something more for, what, Symmetra, D.Va, and Reaper. I mean, they mentioned the Reaper rework a long time ago, and they keep iterating on it. Symmetra, D.Va, and Reaper also got a slight power shift a little bit in terms of Symmetra, you know, having more of an identity, being like a close-range brawler, and like, you know, being able to actually charge up her beam pretty fast. Haven't played against too many Symmetra since the patch, I'll be honest, so I'm not sure if anybody here has better insight onto Symmetra. D.Va feels acceptable, and I'll be honest, I haven't even seen any Reaper as well. Reaper and Symmetra, not very common regardless of the buffs. D.Va, a lot more common, so hey, there's that. Ooh, this is a good question from Spylo. What measures do you guys use to decide which maps need changes? Alex says that community feedback is important. Surveys are also done to figure out which maps and modes people like and don't like. Both inform some targets as well as intuition. All right, hold on, pause. Surveys. I've heard some people get random survey options at the end of a game where it's like scan a QR code or they get it in their email. I've never answered one, and I don't think I've ever seen one, but I've seen it through the grapevine a little bit on Reddit. I think somebody mentioned to me in my chat once, like, hey, did you ever get a survey for Overwatch? I'm actually curious if you guys have done it. Let me know in the comments. What do they ask you? Like, I'm sure it's not just map questions. It might just be a bit of everything. Anyways, continuing on, Alex said the game's design philosophy has changed over time. Old maps had brutal choke points, while newer maps are more breathable with a lot more flank routes. Yes, dude, this new Runasapi map, actually fantastic. I actually like it a lot. This push map, this new push map, so many openings. I'm just surprised in that middle section you're able to just cross over to the other side. There's a jump pad, quite a few different angles to learn, but you know, I like the new maps. Alex says the map changes in Season 13 will open up some of these old maps and apply new design philosophies to them. So map changes, this is included, I assume this includes the map changes they teased a while ago that they're reworking, which includes Numbani, Dorado, Havana, Circuit Royale. I think those are the other four, besides Coliseum, which we got this season. Alex says a lot of learnings have been put into practice on Runasapi. Hey, just like I said. Run back times are more polished. There are a lot more direct and simple paths, areas around, and the points are more open. The final point of Runasapi is more of a choke, unlike Toronto, where it's wide open. And Alec also said push game modes often don't end because teams aren't able to get that final 10%. So I guess they designed Runasapi to be a little bit harder. Okay, cut that last part out. I'll just move on from there. Train, cut that last part. Once I read the last final 10%, just move on. All right, next question. New heroes should be launched on the safe side of strong, quote unquote. How does that statement from September 2023 apply to the hero releases since? Alec responded with, Illari was in the ballpark of what they meant, around 55 to 57% win rate, which is a bit higher than normal. Mauga was actually very average during the trial, but then they pushed too far and made him too tanky on release. Venture was also in that ballpark, I assume the 55 to 57% win rate. Venture was a top 3 DPS during their launch period for about 2 weeks and remained strong even after the first nerfs, and is still good after a few tweaks since, considered a success. Trials give enough information that they feel confident putting heroes into competitive straight away. All right, 2 things. One of the reasons why they put heroes into competitive straight away now is because it's no longer locked behind the battle pass. Let's get that out of the way. And number 2, I actually do think the trial period is very good for balance, but very bad for marketing. It's good for trials because if you do that 3-week trial, like for Mauga, like for Venture, you get a lot of data. Like, you have a limited pool of players at Blizzard, at Team 4, who are play testing internally. But if you can throw that out to the entire player population, you get incredible amounts of meaningful data to work off of. The downside of the marketing is that I've anecdotally noticed that when the hero gets a 3-day trial, a lot of the hype when the new season drops isn't as hype because they already got a taste of what's to be coming. You know, the new hero, the new content, bits of the new content, which is new hero and all the interactions and how the maps will play with it. That's all part of that first couple of day experience. For me, I've noticed my, viewer numbers go down on my main channel when I cover like a Venture Mythbuster or a Mauga Mythbuster or content surrounding that hero on the first day of the season because somebody during, the 3-day trial covered that content. Now you can be like, KarQ, why don't you do Mythbusters during the 3-day trial as well? Why are you complaining about it? I'm not complaining about it. I've just noticed that the numbers are not as poof big on the launch of the season because of the 3-day trial. And my argument against why not do it during that the 3-day trial as well is because I want the most up-to-date interactions and myths and all that kind of stuff. So like something that, if people are covering the Mythbusters during the 3-day trial, that's great. It's good for people who are playing for those 3 days. But a lot of times they do tweak numbers, tweak some interactions after some of that feedback by the season launch date. So I tend to release my stuff a week after the season begins, because even so, sometimes like 1 week after a hero's release, they do like some quick hotfix changes to tweak some things, which changes some of the myths. I've had issues where like I filmed the whole thing and I'm like, oh my god, they just patched this thing I covered, and I don't want to release outdated stuff. And I want the stuff to be evergreen as long as possible, but I'm just rambling now. Let's keep going. Supports with high skill ceilings and utility are often meta in high ranks, like Baptiste, Kiriko, and Lucio, but lower skill supports don't have that. Are you looking to address that in future or current heroes? Alex says it's actually okay if heroes never reach the highest levels, and they never reach the highest levels of competitive play, like Moira. Although I'd argue sometimes Moira is like acceptable. Some teams do opt for Moira because she's simple. She's actually quite safe. Anyways, it's fine if heroes are a little more simple to understand, although they spend a lot of time looking at ways to introduce utility into Moira's kit, but it just distracted from the main gameplay loop that people have grown attached to. So I believe Alec here is actually alluding to the Necrotic Orb, which was something they added during the Overwatch 2 beta trial period 2 years ago to add more, utility or more depth to the character. Necrotic Orb was basically an orb you'd attach to a teammate to give them damage reduction. They also messed around with, I think, Fade. If you used Fade near a teammate, it cleansed their CC that they were applied for. They tried this stuff, and at the end of the day, I think people just like the simplicity of Moira. Moira's fine the way she is, in my opinion, and I think having accessible heroes for players with, many different backgrounds is actually a good thing. I read another Reddit post where someone had like a hand injury from a car accident or something, and the only few heroes that could actually play in Overwatch were Moira, and they're really thankful that a game like Overwatch has accessible heroes that don't require too much dexterity, that they're still able to enjoy the game despite literally losing all mobility on a certain hand or something like that. I thought that was pretty cool. I think the issue with low skill ceiling heroes like Moira is if they're so good that they outpace high skill ceiling heroes. But I've always believe that, you know, if you have higher output mechanical prowess on heroes like Bap, Kiriko, and Lucio, you should be rewarded with higher value than low skill ceiling heroes. I think Moira is at a place right now where she's not, you know, so strong in Giga meta, but she's perfectly acceptable to do the job in almost every instances of ranked games, especially ranked games. And again, I mentioned earlier, some pro players bring her up here and there because of her safe nature and still does the job just fine. Projectile heroes aren't as strong in Overwatch 2 because their utility has become a lot less effective. Is that something you're looking at? Alec responds quickly with, that's not necessarily true. Pharah is really strong. Venture is strong. It just may not feel like that because Cassidy is so popular right now. Pharah has tripled her playtime in the last 3 weeks. I will say it's probably thanks to the OWCS at DreamHack about 3 weeks ago, where a lot of pro teams showed how powerful Pharah can be when played correctly and given enough time with the new rework. It's been about a month, 2 months after the rework. Players are like, wait a minute, this hero's low-key, dark horse. I actually thought she was a dark horse too. I'm glad I was right on that intuition. It's just a better Junkrat. Just the spam is so much faster. You don't fly into the open. The people that just play Pharah incorrectly are the ones who haven't gotten used to the new Pharah, where you literally don't fly into open airspace. You play her as like a pokey hero and you only hard engage if like it makes sense to. There is little to be done. Hanzo is one they've been talking about though recently because he's lost his identity. They wondered if they should change storm arrows or bring back his one shot at certain thresholds. They're actually playing with making some of the more squishy heroes go from 250 to 225 HP, which would, I guess, indirectly benefit Hanzo since he'd be very effective against them. They're still unsure of what his identity is going to be in the future. I know a lot of Hanzo mains are saying, you know, they need to buff Hanzo because he's bad, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a glorified Hanzo hater. I just want a game to be, you know, fun and accessible and still pretty decent for all hero mains. I actually think Hanzo's okay. Yes, he's not as powerful as he used to be, but he's like, to me, not as bad as like Reaper. The Reaper mains are crying, all 5 of them, but there's a lot of Hanzo players, so their noise is definitely a lot more noticeable. And there's a lot of like Hanzo specific streamers who can like voice very valid concerns and criticisms of how the direction of the hero is, you know what I mean? But I think Hanzo's new identity is definitely like, you know, the storm arrow tank busting. It's not as fun as sniping people across the map and just randomly one-shotting them, but I think that whole random 250 headshot where you can just safely climb here was like one of the more annoying things in the game as a non-Hanzo player, and one of the things they wanted to tackle in the Season 9 changes where they gave everybody the 250 HP. The whole point was to remove the burst damage, and they did that for like Junkrat. They did it for Pharah 2-tapping, they did it for Junkrat's 2-taps, they did it for Hanzo's 1-shot. Only hero that could do it is Widowmaker and sometimes Roadhog. You know, the whole if you do land that headshot, yes, it could feel bad. I mean, that's the whole direction of the game. It's like nerfed across the board. Most heroes can't one-shot regardless, apart from a few edge cases. And it's not like Hanzo's unpickable. He's still better than a few heroes, I would argue, but you know, there could be something they could do, and actually nerfing some of the heroes down to 225 HP, like Alex said, would indirectly buff Hanzo quite a bit. So we'll wait for that, and you know, whatever they do with Hanzo, so be it. I don't know how to defend Hanzo mains or vouch for Hanzo in the direction that could make the Hanzo players happy and make Hanzo recipient happy. Thank God I'm not on the balance team for that reason. When people complain about meta, it's often about the heroes that deny engagement, like Roadhog or Torbjorn. People will pick the more passive heroes, which punishes active heroes. Fast characters are countered by characters that don't have to put in the same amount of effort. Is that factored in balancing? I think what Spilo was alluding to is someone will pick Torbjorn. If a Tracer is being very annoying, you can just pick Torbjorn. The turret is a lot more passive and can actually punish, you know, a mechanically active hero like Tracer, a very fast active hero. And like fast active Tracers have to put in a lot of work to master the mechanics, but a Torbjorn, you can just place the turret down. So that's just like the balance between that's what Spilo is trying to get at. So I can see where he's coming from. Let's see what Alec had to say. Is it factored in balancing? And Alec Dawson said yes. Lower skill heroes tend to be more consistent, while higher skill heroes have more of a payout. They are looking at ways for heroes to be more proactive and introduce more risk. They're currently looking at it for Mauga, who plays really well in highly coordinated teams, but otherwise doesn't. He doesn't play well in non-coordinated teams. It's somewhat true because you do need a lot of resources pumped into him, but I feel like a lot of players are just swapping to Mauga when things aren't going their way, because he is pretty easy value by just shooting the tank. Yes, you need resources, but he's a pretty safe option if they're playing like a slow brawler where they're always in front of you to pound at, which is probably one of the reasons why Mauga is so annoying to play against. In any case, during development, Alex said that Venture's primary fire would actually break into shrapnel. It was purposefully weak, but gave an option to deal with things at long range like turrets. But despite it being ineffective, they noticed that players, I assume in the playtest, were hanging in the back and shooting. So they got rid of it to encourage going in, as well as adding, you know, the shields. Oh, so like Venture's passive, I assume, you know, the Explorer's Resolve gives you 50, you know, shield health for like using your abilities close. And then they got rid of the shrapnel to encourage you going in as like taking risks, or else you just sit in the back being a long range poke hero, which is very boring and doesn't play into the hero. I actually like that. I like that. If they can reward Mauga for going in closer versus just standing there and going haha and just, you know, you just stand in a safe range and just lifesteal, maybe they incentivize you actually overrunning and, you know, closing the gap. That could be something they look at for design. That's a good direction. I like Alex's answer there. Does the team prioritize balancing heroes that are more unpopular? I would argue no before I even see it, because like unpopular heroes like Bastion and Reaper and Symmetra, like they definitely forget about them. And Junkrat was so bad for so long because they're not that popular. In any case, Spilo asks, Tracer has been soft meta for quite a long time with minor complaints, but when Roadhog or Mauga became meta for a much shorter period of time, people hated it. Does that factor into your decisions? Alex says it does. Tanks do get a lot more attention because a lot of the gameplay goes through them. Mauga and Roadhog are very survivable and they can blow people up. Heroes that have a threshold for how long they can be meta before Blizzard have to come in and act, and it differs greatly between heroes. If you see it once in every, you know, X amount of games, it's okay. It doesn't need to be changed unless it's a thing you see every game. For example, we like Widow on certain maps, but we wouldn't want it on every map. Okay, so I guess if Alec is saying, yeah, because like a lot of the gameplay runs through tanks because you only have one of them, right? So like if someone locks in the Mauga, you're going to see a Mauga more often than you see the random Widowmaker, because Widow is only good on certain maps. I do think, I mean, it makes sense here. Tanks get a lot more attention because the gameplay goes through them. I do think, well, it looks like Alec didn't actually answer the top one with prioritizing heroes that are more unpopular. He says they do, or maybe he wasn't answering this part. But clearly, like I said earlier, Junkrat, Hanzo, Symmetra took a long time to get some attention because they're not as popular, and the voices maybe are not as loud as a hero like Mauga and Roadhog and Orisa. People are like, they need to nerf this now. No for this, and I guess this part sticks out to me where if you don't see it often enough, so for example, like Symmetra, Hanzo, Junkrat, people aren't picking it that much, it's okay. So to me, this sounds like if they're really weak and they don't see it enough, for some reason they don't prioritize it. But if they're very strong and they see it too often, then they act a bit faster. So I think if I were Alec and the team, they should prioritize a little more on heroes that are unpopular. That's just me though. Wrecking Ball is unkillable without CC, but is too killable with it. Alec responds that we want weakness. Overwatch is built on it. How extreme should weakness be though? Well, we're looking at things with Wrecking Ball, but also looking at things more broadly. Should some of these things be less effective on tanks? We are actually looking at Sleep Dart again, and maybe Hack on Sombra should take a little longer to work on tanks. We think there's a way to smooth out Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball is one of the few characters who is more survivable than he was previously. Players also want less hard counters, and a lot of older designs have very, very hard counters. Some heroes they've made are a bit too well-rounded. They do a little bit of everything, especially supports. We have different goals for each role. In the beginning of Overwatch 2, we wanted supports to be more scrappy, to be able to fight back. That approach has since been scrapped, but you can still see its effects in Illari's design. They're scrapped because supports got too good at surviving, damaging, taking care of themselves, despite all the effort required for the DPS to reach them. Space Ranger has a lot of mobility, but maybe down the line, supports don't need so much. So they say scrapped, but like, remember, development for a hero takes a long time to not only, go find a voice actor, get the hero kit, everything designed. So like, it's probably still remnants of the old design up to Space Ranger, but probably moving forward, new supports after that. If they start designing like now with their new philosophy, the support a year later will probably opt into that is what I assume. What is your most valuable source of feedback is what Spilo asked. Alec Dawson says they make sure they get feedback and testing from both high and low level players. Is it approachable? Is there a lot of skillful elements? We have to look where feedback is consistent. Both positive and negative feedback helps because it paints a fuller picture. Controller was actually a big blind spot for Lifeweaver, and now there is controller playtesting because they missed it, and it does affect a large amount of their player base. I can't believe they forgot about controller. I mean, we saw all the controls that Lifeweaver had. Holy shit. It's really hard for players' perceptions of a character to change. Players believe that because Sojourn and Kiriko are good at the top of the top of the top, they're good everywhere, influencing their popularity despite it not actually being the case. Now, metas are not static and they actually differ from region to region. For example, Korea plays a lot more Ana and they're better with her. It depends what players latch onto and not necessarily balance changes or because it's the perfect strategy. Metas are not static. Wait, it just copied it twice. I guess what Alec is saying here is like they do try to get feedback everywhere, but the most important thing is consistent feedback across all ranges of skill and regions. Because like while one region, NA players, and I'm from NA, we complain a lot about Roadhog and stuff, but then regions like Korea don't play Roadhog period, so they don't hear anything about Roadhog for a while. So they have to find what Korea complains about, what Europe complains about, what NA complains about, what Antarctica complains about, those 5 scientists living on their science bases in Antarctica playing Overwatch on satellite Wi-Fi. You know, their feedback matters too, right? So feedback everywhere that's consistent is probably the most valuable. So, you know, whatever you complain about, wherever you're from, that's fine. If it's complained about by other people too, from everywhere, then we're on to something here. Okay, Spilo asks about the role passive plans. Alec responds with, one of the big reasons the role passives are here is for consistent behavior across a role. There are some things they want to tune, but at the next patch, looking at heroes themselves. As a tank, you don't necessarily feel the passive, but a kit change is a lot more pronounced and make the biggest change to their performance. Okay, so my takeaway here is that they're not really going to change role passives, but the next patch, they're going to look to tweak heroes themselves, like majorly. Okay, that's good sign, I guess. Philo asked, what's the team's stance on how a solo tank should feel? Ooh, a little 5v5 action here. Okay, Alec responded with, our next patch is going to focus on that, hero by hero. They set rules of engagement, decision making, and dictate flow. If you're not feeling satisfied, not living in the success of your team, you're not having as much fun. We see it. Tanks don't feel like they can make as many plays offensively or defensively for themselves. We won't make them unkillable, but more playmaking and more decision making. I'm not sure what they're alluding to by this next patch. Oh, you know what it is? I actually remember that they're teasing their quick play hacked in the next patch, the mid-season cycle on July 9th. They're making it so I think you can like opt into individual hero like augments. If you guys play TFT, or I guess Paladins has it, I heard, but like I haven't actually played Paladins before. But it's like if you play TFT or like, you know, the LoL arenas or whatever, like before you start your match, you get to like pick something to augment your hero. So if you're like, I guess if you're a tank, you can have longer CC, or you can opt for a little extra HP. You just opt for something that makes sense for the flow of the battle. And I think that's what they're going at, if I wasn't mistaken. But that's going to be interesting, and they should definitely test that for sure. Don't just run that into the game. Well, that's why they have quick play hacked. Okay, well, next. Do psychological or objective factors influence balancing more? Alex said that if we see people aren't having fun, we're going to act even if the game is in a perfect state of balance. The most important thing is people enjoying Overwatch and how they feel when playing the game. Are they playing the game? Are they engaging the way we want them to? We can't be too reactive. So the answer is both, right? Even if the game is perfectly balanced, every hero has a 50% win rate, which is perfect. If people still feel like something is OP or something is really weak and they're not liking it, they still have to act because your perception also matters. So that's important. It's true. Psychological and objective they work in harmony. Pickable passives. Oh, they're talking about the thing. Oh, okay, here we go. They actually they teased it a while ago, but we got more information about it. So during this event, each role will have 3 additional passives you can choose from. For example, you get more ammo on DPS as one of your options or your augments. We'll talk about what those passives might be later. They're going to test things in gameplay systems. Is that choice interesting? Will people change their passive before changing their hero? They're going to test gameplay systems, and it's a small look into something bigger, and we might go to depending on how this goes. Okay, so this event, I really do think this is the quick play hacked event. 3 additional passives you can choose from each game. That's actually really cool. I like this. This is the stuff I love with Overwatch, when they cook and they try something wild, like the season 9 with all the extra HP. Yes, we needed to fine-tune stuff, but me, as someone who's played for so many years, 8 years, I love major shifts. 66 to 5v5 Overwatch 2, I was like, hell yeah, I'm in. I like big shifts like this. Season 9 HP projectile buff, fuck it, I'm in. Yo, picking new passives, I'm in. Let's do it. Let's give it a whirl. Initial first takes on the season 11 changes. Ooh, okay, wait, I thought this would be at the beginning. Okay, so I guess Alec alluded or started speaking about pick rates. Roadhog's pick rate was down significantly, Sojourn's down significantly, and they're starting to see Ashe pop up a bit. Symmetra is up, Illari is rising quickly, Junker Queen up, Pharah continues to trend upward, and we're aware. Pink Mercy caused a spike in Mercy even in comp. Cassie's still very popular. There's a lot of role diversity. Mauga is actually slightly below average and doing better in a more coordinated environment, and they're looking at things longer term for Mauga like Cardiac Overdrive and how effectively he can set squishies on fire. That's looking good. Final bit of this interview. Upcoming teases that we should know. Alec Dawson said there's going to always be bug fixes, and Space Ranger tease. Space Ranger is going to be highly mobile and versatile. She will bring some utility that only one character has at the moment, and games are going to be really fast. Okay, so Alec is basically speaking about speed boost. Come on. Games are going to be fast, highly mobile. Okay. Roadhog won't get more defensive capabilities. Okay, so they're not going to touch Roadhog. And we want to make Winston's ultimate and right-click better. Wait, Primal Rage is already a good ultimate. Why would they make this better? This is a good high-skill ultimate. I don't think they need to touch Winston's ult. Right-click is the Tesla Zap Cannon. I think it's a fine poke tool. I think Winston's fine the way he is. Reinhardt's charge back to 300 damage again. That's fine for Rein players. I don't mind this. Like, if you're not going to give Rein, like, any sort of CC immunity when he charges, like Mauga's Overrun, like, you can still cancel charge in a million ways with either damage or sleep dart or whatever. So I'm fine with charge being able to kill a squishy again. That's fine. But the Winston part, Anyways, and 6v6, not mentioned here. All right, great summary. Thank you very much, Shadio Chow, for summarizing the 1-hour interview. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments of Alec's answer and the direction of the game. Thanks for listening to me yap about it, and peace out.